Baltimore Ravens had a disappointing end to their 2021 NFL season. They started 8-3 and finished 8-9 and missed the playoffs. There's a lot of questions left to be answered in the Baltimore organization, none bigger than the decision to potentially lock up star quarterback, young quarterback Lamar Jackson for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, look, this sounds like a no-brainer. Jackson has won an MVP. He's won a playoff game. He's taken this team to the playoffs 3 times in his 4 years as a starter, and he probably would have done it this year had he not gotten hurt. So it seems like a no-brainer. Lock him up, big long-term deal. You know, you've seen all kinds of teams do it. Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, right? All these guys, even without winning the Super Bowl, they get their big deals because teams want to lock up their quarterback long-term. However, the Ravens, interestingly enough, have not openly, at least, expressed a deep desire or at least a sense of urgency to lock Lamar Jackson for the long term. And I've got a few interesting tidbits here I'm going to go into real quick. The first thing I want to talk about is this is Mike Preston. He's a journalist. He's the beat writer for the Baltimore Ravens. And why this is a big deal, his comments is, you know, Preston has connections in the Ravens front office, the coaching staff, the management. He's never going to print anything that's going to be directly against management, right? If he comes out and attacks, you know, the direction that management's going in, the Ravens will shut down his access, and that hurts Preston's articles. So Preston put out a column pretty recently. I'm going to read this tidbit from you, and then I'm curious what your thoughts are on. Says he's talking about Jackson here and locking him up long term. Preston said now they should shut down negotiations with the 4th-year quarterback and allow him to play under the 5th-year option they picked up last season. If he continues to improve and leads the team deep into the playoffs, then the Ravens might want to offer him a multi-year deal. There seems to be a lot of catch-alls to that. He's got to lead him to a deep playoff run, and they might lock him up to a long-term deal. Doesn't this sound like a no-brainer to lock up Jackson? What is Baltimore doing here? What are you thinking?
So, in a more fan perspective, I guess is how I would put my opinion on this matter. I look at Jackson. I look what's best for Jackson. Jackson probably had his worst year last year. Statistically, wins-wise, he obviously didn't make the playoff. He made the playoff all of his other 3 years. I don't think Jackson wants to close a deal off of his performance of last year. I think, if anything, his stock went down a little bit. So I'm not saying he's bad or he was any worse, but just because everybody was injured, he was injured for the first time really ever in his career. It's not like you said. This is like a buy low scenario for Baltimore. Oh, he's down. He got hurt. We didn't make the playoffs. We could offer him low here. And to me, that sounds like Baltimore doesn't want to judge him off of this year. They want to give him another year, give him a full, healthy roster, let him go out there, show what he's truly got with it. Because from the beginning of this year, it was a wash. Half the starters were injured in training camp and preseason. So he never started this year off on the right foot. So let's clean slate, go into the 5th year. That's what the 5th year is there for. But now the part I don't agree with, even if he doesn't make it to the playoffs, you still give him a deal. And it's going to be a pretty good deal. Maybe you don't give him $50 million a year like Patrick Mahomes. If he leads you on a deep playoff run, that maybe is what you're looking at. But you could easily give him like a $30-35 million a year deal, even if he doesn't make the playoffs. And I think it's worth it, probably.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a lot more inferior quarterbacks that got paid big deals. Jared Goff, Carson Wentz. I already talked about Dak Prescott. Jimmy Garoppolo not long ago was paid a big deal after just having 5 or 6 really good games with the 49ers. You look, Josh Allen. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. He hasn't been to a Super Bowl. He's never been an MVP. He got a big deal. So it's really weird because Lamar Jackson has had some, accomplishments in his career that far outpaces those guys. But there's a lot of questions of whether or not he's going to get this big deal. Now, you brought up something that's interesting, and we had did some research, and Andrew Brandt, who we're a big fan of, he's a former Green Bay Packers executive, now does some podcasts related to the business of sports. He was asked about the Lamar Jackson situation. I think he said something, and this is, I think, where you're going with it. And this is what Andrew Brandt said when he was interviewed. He says, about this option. He said, look, they still have a year left. It's an option year. And that's the advantage of first-round quarterbacks is you can exercise the option, you can watch and learn, and you don't have to sink the huge guaranteed money before year 5. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. It's like both sides kind of look at that and say, look, last year was an injury year. A lot of weird things happened. Let's sit back, let's watch, let's see how next year shakes out with the healthy roster before we potentially move on Jackson. I just think it's weird because you have your guy. And I feel like the salary cap's only going to go up. I wonder why the Ravens aren't committing now, but maybe they're just worried. Maybe they're worried about the injury. Maybe they're worried about the roster.
Yeah, and I think the thought on everyone's mind is not if, but and not even, it's more like how much. Like that's what they're looking at. Does he have a justification for a record-setting deal? Or do you kind of squeak him in there in the mid-range of the last few deals that have been made? And that's kind of what you're looking at. Now, obviously, and I don't even think this is an opinion anymore, he's the best rusher out of any of the quarterbacks in the NFL. He's not necessarily the best passer. I'd say he's more middle of the road in the passing game, but he's progressing. He's making some strides. I hope he goes. He worked with Tom House last offseason, and he really kind of, brought his passing game back up. And I think they've hired a new receivers coach, new passing game coordinator. It's done a lot for him. But I think another part of this saga that we should talk about is Jackson isn't the only one looking for a new deal this offseason. I believe there's reports out there that Baltimore and John Harbaugh are also close on coming to a new deal. And this is something that is that's important because Harbaugh is a crucial part of this team. Obviously, he's one of the better coaches in the NFL as of right now. And in a time that is so uncertain, you have to have some certainty. So I think it's a big move for Baltimore to go ahead and just give Harbaugh the extension, let him know, hey, you started off on a great foot, making this new system, developing everything. Let's keep it going forward. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great move by the Ravens organization. They fired Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator, not long ago as a response to the season and his ridiculous amount of cover zero blitzes he calls. I think he's a good coach. I think he just got a little crazy with it.
It would annoy the ever living crap out of me every time he would do it.
Yeah, it got a little out of hand, but I think it's good, a good move by the Ravens organization. You show the accountability, defensive coordinator, move on, but you lock up Harbaugh, who is a great coach by every right. He's won with McNair, he's won with Flacco, he's won with Lamar Jackson, obviously. So he's in a tough division that they've always had to fight through. I think locking up Harbaugh is good, and I think they're going to play the wait and see approach with Jackson. I think eventually they're going to get him the deal. I think him and Harbaugh are going to be linked at the hip. They want to give it one more year, I think, before they commit to Lamar.
Yep, and I don't fault them for it. So we'll keep an eye on this story and update you if there are any changes. But as of right now, Harbaugh looking at getting a new deal this year. Jackson, a wait and see approach in the coming season.